So today we're going to be discussing the underrated discography of Rick Ross. If you're not living under a rock, then you already know who Rick Ross is, and you're probably familiar with a bunch of his songs, but you might not be familiar with all of his albums and how quality they actually are. Honestly, there's an argument to be made that Rick Ross does not have a bad album, but let's just start from the beginning. Port of Miami was released in 2006 and was the debut album by Rick Ross and the big introduction for everybody in the world to him. You might not be familiar with this album, but what you are going to be familiar with is the song Hustlin'. That song was extremely popular. Honestly, I heard it for like a while before I even knew who Rick Ross was or like where the song came from. I just kept hearing that hustlin', like everyone knows that. It's pretty crazy to go back and see that right on his debut album because that was a pretty big hit. Now, this is nowhere near his best album, but as an introduction for Rick Ross, not only did he have smash hit, but he also had a bunch of songs such as Cross That Line with Akon, For the Low, Pots and Pans, and others that were honestly really good songs and gave you a nice introduction to Rick Ross as a rapper. And overall, the project is just really well made, well put together. There aren't really any bad songs, and he just did his thing. This isn't the greatest album of all time, but it really set a standard for his discography of at least having a 6 out of 10 to 7 out of 10 as a whole album, and I think that was pretty huge as he never dipped below this standard again in my opinion. Now his second album, Trilla, which I feel like is largely forgotten besides a couple songs, basically continues a trend of having a solid album with a few standout songs that you can just bump. Honestly, I feel like that is pretty underrated. When you go back and listen to the discographies of a lot of artists, even including the legends, there can be a lot of duds, and having just a listenable album that you could just throw on, I think is pretty huge. Obviously, the standout track here is going to be Maybach Music with Jay-Z. That is not only a top tier song in Ross's discography, but I would argue it's a top tier rap song in general. I mean, Ross, whenever he links up with a legend such as Jay-Z or Nas, he always steps up to the challenge. He'll give you a verse that will rival the legend, and you could even argue maybe on a couple songs that he might best a legend. I'm not going to argue he does better than Jay-Z here. Jay-Z drops arguably one of his best verses ever, so I'm really not going to go say Ross did better. But Ross did his thing, and it definitely gave Jay-Z a stage to just kill the song and make it his own. And honestly, I appreciate that. Overall, one of the best rap songs I've ever heard, and there's even a couple more songs on the album that I like a lot as well. Another one would be Here I Am with Nelly and Avery Storm. That was a decently popular song as well. And obviously, Nelly, he's catchy. Ross does his thing. It's just an overall good song. I also really like the song Billionaire. It's just catchy and like just talking about rags to riches, that he finally made it. He's a hood billionaire, which would obviously go on to become one of the name of his albums. So I thought that was a cool song in general. We Shinin' is great as well. And then This Is the Life with Trey Songz, a banger. Trey Songz, back in this era, you know, he was killing shit. So that was a good song as well. Overall, this just continued the streak for Ross. He now is 2 of 2. I think that's pretty impressive. I can name a few rappers that are incredible, such as like Jadakiss, that are great rappers, but don't actually have a great album or even what I would say good album that you can just put on and enjoy. But Ross now has 2 in a row right at the start of his career, and I think he's just going to continue that trend. Now here is when most people would argue that Rick Ross really took a big jump and probably became the Ross that he's known for today, and that would be with 2009's Deeper Than Rap. Deeper Than Rap is a much more concise project. It's only 14 songs, which in comparison to his last albums is like 3 or 4 less, and really does add to the feel as it's much more concise. There's a lot of features on the album too, which I didn't know how I would feel listening to it again, but honestly all the features did pretty well, and this album is really good and what most people would consider consider one of Ross's best, if not his best. Standout tracks are going to be Mafia Music, of course, Maybach Music 2 with T-Pain, Lil Wayne, and Kanye, Rich Off Cocaine with Avery Storm, Usual Suspects with Nas, Gunplay with Gunplay. I mean, honestly, every song is pretty much a standout. So that's why this album is heralded as it is, because honestly, it deserves it. This is a great project. He kind of cut it down from the last album, really made sure the song quality was really up there, and I think you can argue this is Ross's first great album. At this point, he's gone 3 for 3, and you could pretty much argue that each album is a step up from the last, and then that brings us right to Teflon Don. Once again, with Teflon Don, Ross gets even more concise, cuts off 2 more songs, drops down to 12 songs total, and delivers you nothing but bangers with a few different vibes, and he really just did his thing and delivered arguably a rap classic, not only for his discography but just for rap in general. This album is just really good. The opening song, I'm Not a Star, which would become John with Lil Wayne, Freemason with Jay-Z, Tears of Joy with CeeLo, Maybach Music 3 with T.I., Jadakiss, and Erykah Badu, Blowing Money Fast, Aston Martin Music. I mean, come on. All of those songs speak for themselves. I mean, I didn't even mention MC Hammer with Gucci. These songs all speak for themselves, and it can just tell you why this album is so highly rated among Ross fans and hip-hop fans in general. At this point, Ross has 4 straight banger albums, and I would say each one is a step up from the last, which I don't think you can say about many discographies. What rappers are really getting better each album? I mean, usually it's gonna be the other way around, of course. So to see Ross be able to do that 4 times in a row is really impressive. And once again, it's just an album that you can just listen to, right? You can just put it on and you're not gonna hit a song that's just terrible and make you want to turn it off. I really don't think Ross has many, if any, bad songs. Like, you might find some mid songs in his discography, but bad songs, I don't know, man. I don't know. Now, I won't be covering his mixtapes in this video, but it is worth noting this is when he started to get into the mixtapes heavy. So in December of 2010, he did Ashes to Ashes, and then January 6, 2012, he did Rich Forever. Now, Rich Forever not only is a great mixtape, but a lot of people would argue that it rivals his albums. So if you want to take a listen to that, I definitely would check that out. It's a great mixtape. I mean, it would even include a few songs that would make it onto his upcoming album that we're about to talk about. Ross's next album would be God Forgives I Don't, releasing July 31st, 2012. This would mark Ross's 5th studio album. At this point, he'd been in the game for quite a while. His debut album was 6 years ago. So the fact that he's still here dropping albums, and this album did go #1 on the US charts and go gold, so that is impressive as well. There's something about the aesthetic of this album. A lot of times people will mention how Rick Ross's music sounds like he's just naming stuff in his mansion after he's like retired from the dope game or some shit. And I 100% agree with that. But I feel like this album totally encapsulated that. Like with the cover, songs like Amsterdam and stuff, it just made you feel luxurious, and it made you feel like you made it from grinding. And this shit was just crazy. In my opinion, I would say this is one of his best albums. I would say the song with Andre 3000, 16, is arguably his best song. Not only because of Andre, I think Ross kills it as well. And the fact that it's an 8-minute song, but it feels like it's 4 minutes, is really a testament just to how good it is. Obviously, you had other bangers like So Sophisticated, Diced Pineapples. Everyone loves that song. I'm not gonna sit here and say this is as consistent as Teflon Don or even deeper than rap, but I will say the highs of this are really good, and there's no songs that are offensively bad or anything like that. I'd also argue that 10 Jesus Pieces is one of his best songs as well. Overall, this album just continued the streak of good ass Ross albums. And at this point, you really gotta think about where Ross sits in your rapper ranking. I mean, how many rappers can you put on the ranking and have 5 albums that are considered good or better than good? I mean, the list of rappers with 5 albums that are good is very, very low. Let's be real here. Next up is gonna be Rick Ross's Mastermind. I feel like this is when things started to get a little shaky for Ross. Not that there's anything wrong with this album specifically, but I feel like after this album is when things started to go downhill for him. Obviously, he had the big song with Devil Is a Lie with Jay-Z, and that pretty much took over everything. So that pretty much sealed the deal that this would be a successful album and people would go out and buy it. But is it as good as the other ones? Honestly, I'm gonna say at this point, this is probably one of the weaker albums, like 1, 2, or 3 in his discography at this point. But I think his discography is so good that it's not really that low to be one of the lower albums in his discography. So overall, I think this album is a good listen. The Devil Is a Lie is a good song. War Ready with Jeezy. I always love Supreme. Who doesn't like In Vain with The Weeknd? Walking on Air with Meek is a great song too. And of course, Sanctified with Kanye and Big Sean. There's a lot of bangers on this album. I just think this kind of marked the downturn for his career. Okay, so yeah, if you're familiar with Ross's discography, then you know that we've come to Hood Billionaire. Hood Billionaire came out the same year as Mastermind. Mastermind came out March 3rd, 2014, and Hood Billionaire come out November 24th, 2014. Now, if you look it up, it seems like I believe it was either the Meek or Wale album got pushed back. I believe the Meek album. And so he wanted to have a release for the holidays. So he ended up rushing this album out, which obviously in retrospect was a very bad idea, as this is generally considered Ross's worst album by a lot of people. Now, is it unlistenable? Is it straight garbage? Not at all. Let's be real. Ross doesn't make songs that are like a 4 out of 10. I think if Ross hops on a track, it's probably at least a 5 out of 10 song, and I'm not joking. I would say the album isn't terrible, but it's just full of songs that are 5 or 6 out of 10 and aren't that special at all. Obviously, Neighborhood Drug Dealer with Metro Boomin is fucking crazy. Hood Billionaire is also a good song. There's a few songs, but overall, this album was just not it. And for a release that came off Mastermind that a lot of people did actually like with the singles, I don't know what he was thinking, and this was just a horrible idea. This album really marked the downturn in his discography in most people's eyes. Now, his 8th album, Black Market, would be released December 4th, 2015. I feel like at this point, people had pretty much tuned out of Ross. I mean, I'm just looking at the sales right now. It looks like it debuted at number 6 on the Billboard with only 65,000 first week, which at this point for Ross was pretty bad. I mean, let's see. His numbers were just going down. People kind of had checked out after that last album that just was not good. Now, if I was to put this on and listen to it, I don't think I would be mad. There's a few songs I do like. Color Money is probably my favorite song on here. I just think this album, it's kind of just unremarkable. It's just more Ross music. It's like a very good project to listen to, but it doesn't really stand out, and there's nothing that you're gonna go back and listen to. You're just gonna be listening through and be like, oh, that's pretty cool, you know what I mean? So I don't know. There's nothing wrong with it. It just doesn't stand out. Now, this is going to sound crazy, but his next album, Rather You Than Me from 2017, is actually pretty underrated in my eyes. Going back and listening through that album, there's not a lot of songs that are mid, and the production is pretty great. I mean, Santorini Greece is very good. I like Powers That Be with Nas. Triple Platinum is great as well. And I like Maybach Music 5. Honestly, I think this album is pretty underrated. If you haven't listened to Rather You Than Me in a while, maybe go and check it out again. I'd say this is a step in the right direction after his last album, Black Market, and Hood Billionaire, which might have been a little bit of missteps. And I think people agreed as well, because he did bounce back with 100,000 sales first week. So it does seem like people were more interested in this than the last 2 projects. So I think he really made a turnaround here. Now, his second to last album released at this point, well, I'm recording this in 2025, November, so who knows how many albums he'll release past then. But at this point, his second to last album is Port of Miami 2, which is his 10th album, and it was released in 2019. Obviously, this is a sequel to his original Port of Miami album, so it was cool to see him go back, although I'm always apprehensive when the artist does the sequel to the classic album or one of their classic albums kind of thing. So I wasn't too excited with that name, but listening through, I think it's a solid project. I don't think it reaches the highs of his previous albums, but that might just be a testament to how good his previous albums were. Overall, I think this is actually a solid album. White Lines with Dageloaf is actually a stupid catchy song. Turnpike Ike is a good song. I really liked Vegas Residency as well. And Gold Roses with Drake isn't bad either. Overall, I think this album is solid. Once again, I just feel like people had checked out of Ross a little bit at this point. It did go number 2 on the Billboard, don't get me wrong. It had 80,000 sales first week. So at 2019, that's not too bad. It's just Ross was never going to reach the highs that he previously had. Now here comes the confession part of the video. I actually have not heard his most recent album from 2021, Richer Than I Ever Been. It could be amazing, it could be ass, but I have not heard that yet. So this could be a great project. I just can't speak on it, to be honest. Will I ever listen to it? Maybe. I mean, my ears got tired from listening to 9 Rick Ross albums, or 10 actually. So will I make it through this? Maybe. Am I gonna listen to that Meek Mill collab album? Probably not. I mean, they did that shit 10 years too late. I don't get it, but whatever. Yeah, let me know if you've listened to this album. Let me know how it is. It could be amazing. It could be trash. Just let me know. But overall, I think Rick Ross has a top-tier discography in rap. It might be crazy to say, and obviously I haven't even heard his latest shit, but if I was just to go through like his run of Port of Miami, Trilla, Deeper Than Rap, Teflon Don, and God Forgives I Don't, and you want to tack on Mastermind at the end there too, that's a good run. I mean, 6 good to great to amazing albums. I don't think many rappers can actually say that they have that. Honestly, you could probably list like 10, 20 rappers that have that many albums that are actually that good. So I think he really did his thing over his career. The fact that he's still here, he's still making hits, he lasted this long. The fact that I'm making this video, I mean, I would encourage you to go back through his discography and just check it out. You're gonna find something on each album that you're really gonna like. And overall, Ross, I think he's a top 20 rapper for me at this point. Not necessarily in skills, but just in terms of who is my favorite and who has the best discography. I think he's up there. Let me know what you think. Drop a like, drop a comment, all that jazz. You know how it is. I'll make it more. Peace.